guess, just kind of start by telling your story. What happened on this particular night? How did it begin? I know that it began with a parking situation and escalated. So wherever you'd like to begin.
It was a Sunday afternoon, and my daughter, who was very pregnant at the time, was driving my car, and she was dropping off her oldest child for me to watch so that she and her boyfriend could go to the movies. And I went out on the porch that day, and she had parked the car in the wrong direction on the wrong side of the street, facing that way, basically just to drop the baby off, come up the stairs and hand me the baby so that she could go back and leave. And by the time she got to the stairs, the patrol car came out of Walgreens parking lot and slowed down. And the window was down, and a female police officer was driving. And I said to her, she's just dropping the baby off, she's leaving. And from that point, all kind of verbal, nasty things were coming from this police officer's mouth. And I was shocked. I'd never had such a response from a police officer. And she literally stopped the car in front of my car. She pulled the cruiser around, and she stopped in front of the car that my daughter was driving. And she jumped out of the car and ran up to the porch. So my daughter and I are like looking at each other like, what is going on? She's telling me that I didn't ask you any questions. You don't talk to me unless I tell you to. And it just was insane why this was happening. The male officer got out of the car, and he was standing in the street, and he was like, what's going on? He didn't even know what was happening. To my understanding, he was a rookie at the time, and she was training him. So I said to her very nicely, very professionally, can I please have your name and badge number? And she got irate. She started telling me she was not going to give it to me. It was none of my business. And I said, well, you're on my porch, and you're screaming at me, and you weren't even invited here. I want your name and your badge number. And she continued to say nasty, racially motivated, speech towards me. And she looks to my daughter, and she tells my daughter, if you don't tell her to shut up, I'm going to write you a ticket. So my daughter looked at her, and she says, I'm not telling my mother to shut up. And she said, fine, I'm giving you a ticket. So I told my daughter, I said, don't say a word. Walk back down to the car, sit in the car and wait. I came in the house, brought the baby in, and I called upstairs because my husband at the time was upstairs sleeping. And I told him what was going on, and we called the 4th District, and I told whoever it was that answered the phone what was happening. And they said, well, get the number off of the vehicle and come down to the station and file the complaint. So as we were coming back out the house, the male officer was walking away from my car that my daughter was sitting in. And I said, can I see the ticket? And he said yes. And he walked towards me to hand me the ticket. And the female officer at the time was standing out in the street by the patrol car. She ran up up the driveway, and she was screeching at the top of her lungs that I was interfering with official police business. And I said to her, this is my car. This is my house. That's my daughter. And the ticket should have been issued to me because it's my vehicle. It wasn't even her vehicle. She may have been driving it, but it's sitting in front of my house. So you really should have wrote the ticket to me. And she really got irate. I said, but it's okay because I'm going down here right now and I'm going to file a complaint against you. And I started walking away from her. And when I did, I didn't even know she was behind me. She had grabbed me and she pulled me all the way across the yard. And she threw me on top of the car, and she's cursing me, and my family is like, what is going on? Because it was just totally out of control. She was just out of control. I'd never seen anything like this before. And I'm like, I don't have a weapon, you can let go of me. And she takes my purse and she throws it to my husband, and she tells them to get back, and she grabs me and she throws me into the back of the police car. And the male officer is standing there, and he is like totally confused because he had no idea what was going on. He gets into the patrol car and he looks at me and he says, please don't say another word to her. Don't open your mouth again. So now at this point, I'm kind of connecting that even he knows that this is a bad situation. She's now digging. She went back and snatched my purse from my husband. She's digging through my purse looking for my ID. She gets in the car and she zooms off down the street. Well, my family was just totally panicked because they didn't know what she was going to do with me. So they followed her as she's driving. And she takes me down to 55th and Grand, and she's sitting there with me. She didn't know what to do with me. She had no clue what to do with me. And I'm sitting in the back of the car, and I'm going, oh my God, she's going to kill me. I knew something was going to happen to me. She calls a supervisor. A supervisor shows up. The supervisor does not speak to me. And she gets out the car. She speaks to the supervisor. The supervisor tells her, just write her up for aggravated disorderly conduct and interference with official police business. And so she doesn't talk to me. She doesn't ask me what happened. There's no interaction with the male officer, with the supervisor to hear what he had to say, nothing. She just listened to what Officer Garbeck said. And I'm sitting in the back of the car and I'm still like scared because I don't know what's going to happen to me. And she drives me over to the 1st District, I believe it was. And at this point, I didn't know that my husband and kids were in the car following. And so as they're taking me out of the car, she's like yanking me and pulling me. And she's like, just grabbing on me. She's very forceful. And my son at the time, who was probably 15, he sees this and he just starts screaming. I didn't even know he was there. He just starts screaming, take your hands off my mother. I'm sick of you. And my husband is telling him, come back. And the male officer said, please just go back. He's like literally being a bodyguard in some kind of way, but for me and my son. And I'm telling my son, go back. I'm okay. Just go back. Because I did not know what she was capable of after seeing this happen. I get into the police department, into the station, and she and her friends that were there that were supposed to process me, I'm literally getting hit. I have a condition called fibromyalgia and very sore muscles, very hurt. This is in the very early stages of me being diagnosed, so I'm very sore, and movement and pulling on me, it's really, really doing some damage. And they weren't patting me down. They were literally hitting me as hard as they could. They were hitting me. There was one officer who says, okay, that's enough. You stop. Don't stop doing that. And they're literally hitting me. They didn't care. I was crying. They didn't care. They were humiliating me. They were saying very nasty things to me. You people are going to learn to listen when we tell you to do something. There was a lot of racial innuendo and slurs that were being used by this officer. And I was shocked. I was just genuinely shocked. Her cohorts were along with her, but there was this one officer who was very female officer who was like very compassionate, and she was like, okay, that's enough, get off of her, leave her alone. She took me into a cell and they made me sit on the floor. It was a cold, wet floor. You could see the water dripping out from the walls onto the floor. This is really great for my condition, right? The compassionate officer came back and she took me out to use the phone so I could call my attorney, and I did. And my husband brought my medicine. They would not let me have my medication. They refused to give me my medication. I'm not quite sure how long I was there. I just remember that there was 2 officers out of probably 8 officers that had some compassion and were like, this is crazy. Could see that this was an out of control situation. Went to court shortly after that for the ticket that was written. Officer Garbeck never showed up. She never showed up to enforce that ticket and say that that was a legitimate ticket. The ticket was thrown out. I went to court the first time and pled not guilty to the charges leveled against me. The prosecutor came in and said, willing to put you into a first-time offenders program. And I said, no, you're not putting me into a first-time offenders program because I didn't do anything wrong, and we're going to take this to trial. We left, came back again. Prosecutor came in probably 3 or 4 more times offering this first-time offender. I said, no. Because what she did was she made the mistake of charging me with the aggravated disorderly conduct. that allowed me to a jury trial. That allowed me to have my rights to be exercised in front of a jury. And so,
did they ask you to sign a civil liability waiver to kind of agree that you wouldn't sue the city if they gave you let you plead to anything lesser than what they charged you with?
No.
Okay.
No, they never offered me that. The only thing they ever offered me was the misdemeanor first time offender program, which I'd said, no, I'm not going to do a program for something I did not do wrong.
Right. How long were you in jail?
I'm not quite sure. I know it might have been 12 hours, maybe longer.
And you said the arrest was in the afternoon?
Yes, and I know it was like late night, early morning when I got home. And what was interesting was that my attorney had gone to post my bond, and they could not find me. They had lost me in the system. So it took even longer for me to get out because they lost me. And when the next shift came on, they came in and said, who are you? Why are you here? And that's when they found me to release me. But my bond could not be posted until they found me in the system, and they had not put me in the system.
Where were you in jail? What district were you in? One of the districts?
I think it was the first district, if memory serves me correctly, which was probably one of the most horrendous places I could imagine being held. Again, it was cold. There was water on the floor. It was no heat whatsoever. You could see your breath. And it just was very unsanitary conditions. Very unsanitary.
And I thought also the complaint mentioned that they didn't give you a blanket.
Nothing. I was sitting on the cold floor. Yes.
Tell me again about the physical abuse that you suffered. You mentioned that they were hitting you, and it wasn't just that they were patting you down.
Right.
They were. Talk about that a little bit more.
They weren't a pat down. You would expect is light touching to see if there was a weapon or anything there. I had on a blue jean dress that day, so you could very clearly see there were no weapons on me. They took my belt, they took my shoestrings, they took all those things. They even took my socks. I don't know why they took my socks, but they took my socks. Again, they were hitting me, and even after one had already done the hitting pat down, here comes number two doing the same thing, because as they told me, they were going to teach me a lesson. You people are going to learn to do what we tell you to do when we tell you to do it. And I was just shocked at seeing how you don't even know why I'm in here. You don't know the circumstances of why I'm in here. You don't know what led up to this. You don't know my physical condition, none of that. And even though I'm saying to you, you're hurting me, it was funny. It was a joke. Ha ha ha, she's so sensitive. She's, she's funny. Ha ha. And it just, the mentality of what I was seeing there is not what I want to see in a police department. I don't want to know that people who like Tanisha Anderson has mental illnesses are being subjected to people who have no compassion to the public. And I wasn't mentally ill, so I probably got off lucky getting smacked and hit the way I was getting smacked and hit. And for them, it was funny. It was a joke. It was ha ha ha. So what? She's crying. Look, we've got her crying, and it was a humiliation attached to it. So. Going to court and putting this in front of a jury was definitely on my to-do list at that point.
Did you end up going to court?
Yes. The first day of trial, the officer testified, the female officer testified, and she could not justify at any point why she did the things that she did in terms of writing the ticket. She could not justify why I was arrested, what was the actual had I done according to what the law says aggravated disorderly conduct is, what was my behavior that I had, exhibited for her to feel that was an appropriate charge. And she could not explain other than I kept asking for her name and her badge. That was my disorderly conduct, was asking for her name or her badge. The male officer was not at all, every time he was asked a question, he said, "Oh, I was out in the street. I didn't hear what was said." He was very vague about his responses. He could not support the testimony that she was giving. That was day one. Day two was mine and my family's opportunity to tell our story of what happened. What was interesting was that the prosecutor who kept coming in and asking me to do the first time offender program, and they would drop the charges, less than an hour before we were going to go to trial, he dropped it and gave it to another prosecutor who came in and didn't know what he was walking into. He had no clue what he was walking into. So on the second day of trial, of hearing the testimony, the racial slurs, the things that were said, the witness testimony from my family, and even from the officers, the jury was out less than 5 minutes. Yes, less than 5 minutes. The judge sent him back to the room. The prosecutor said, "I'll be right back. I'm going down to my office." And by the time he got on the elevator, the bailiff came out and said, "The jury is back." So it took us actually longer waiting for the prosecutor to come back upstairs so that they could render. Actually, let me back up. The first day, the judge, and I believe it was Michael Zone at the time, he dismissed the charge of interference. And the next day, the jury came back and found me not guilty of aggravated disorderly conduct. So from that point was when we discussed and decided we're going to sue the city for this misconduct of the police department.
And also, if I remember from the lawsuit, it said that that this officer or both were the civil review board recommended that they be punished or dealt with in some way, and that didn't happen, right?
I don't remember anything. If they sent something, they may have sent it to my lawyers, but in terms of them sending something directly to me from the Civilian Review Board and or from the Office of Professional Standards, the Office of Professional Standards actually lost my complaint. The gentleman that was over it, I just remember his first name was Mark, he died behind the desk reviewing my file. When he died, someone else came in and they couldn't find any of the records. So I had to go back down there, refile the complaint, and do a whole new complaint, even on video with them. I've never heard from the Office of Professional Standards. Now, as far as the Civilian Review Board is concerned, if they disposed of it and made recommendations, they may have sent it to my attorney, but I've never been physically sent one to my house.
Okay. So let's talk about sort of the current state of affairs with Cleveland Police and the Department of Justice report. When you heard about those findings, was there any element of surprise that for you that this is a pattern and practice of the Cleveland Police?
No.
Did you at the time of your case feel like that was an isolated incident, or have you all these years wondered, when is the truth going to come out about the way they deal with the public? Talk about that if you could.
I'm a behind the scenes person. I've been watching the Cleveland Police Department for years. My case opened up my knowledge and understanding of what was happening in our city with the Cleveland Police Department. I initially became involved because of my case, but then when the Brandon McLeod case occurred, which was not too far away from my situation, I really became distraught. And then through that year, there were so many African American males that were being gunned down by the Cleveland Police Department that were unarmed. It became alarming for me. I've written letters, I've been to the meetings, I've talked to the mayor, I've been through all of that, and I've listened to all of the excuses and the reasons why things are still the same. And there's just no excuse. There's no excuse, there's no reasoning for what's happening in our city. They've taken the words protect and serve off of the vehicles. That is a concern for me. Why? Because their job is to protect and serve. And if you're not looking at that on your vehicle every single day, your mentality is now what? What drives you? What's your motivation? What is it that tells you what you're supposed to be doing in this job? I did read the Department of Justice. My organization helped the Department of Justice during the investigation phase in talking to people in our community and getting those complaints and where to go and giving them a pretty good understanding of what's been happening here for a long time. I think it's tragic that we have council members who have been in public service for over 30 years, our current mayor, previously being the president of city council, the head of city council, now being the mayor. I think it's tragic that so many lives have been lost, and there are things that could have been done along the way that have not been done to ensure public safety. When I see Tamir Rice laying on the ground and then find out they don't have CPR, first aid training, that's a red flag for me that something's gone drastically wrong with our elected officials. I'm more than concerned. When I see a tank pull up over a civil custody dispute to get a man out of his house who had no clue what was going on outside, that is scaring me, because we are now looking at the real show of force of the Cleveland Police Department. And I think that if the city of Cleveland, the residents as well as the elected officials don't get this under control, we're in big trouble. We're in huge trouble. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all about anything that's happening here. Nothing is shocking me, and that's even worse, because something should still be able to shock you.
Do you have any questions that I
No.
This is good.
Yeah, it is.
Good interview.
I just like to think this is probably more of this goes on than we'll ever know about.
Oh, there's way more that goes on, and I think that's why there's such an opposition from the president of the union now. He doesn't want those cameras, because now we're going to be able to see everything that's going on. But we already know. The Department of Justice, in speaking to the investigators, saying to me, we pulled their records. Everything we asked for came from their records. So what they're not in agreement with, we're not quite sure understanding what they're not in agreement with. What they're not in agreement with is that they have completely ignored the public safety. Completely. They don't want to admit that. They don't have a choice now. They have to admit it. And they have to make amends for all the deaths in the last 15 years that have occurred in this city by the hands of the Cleveland Police Department. It's ridiculous that these officers are being promoted. The officer that injured me, humiliated me, arrested me for asking for her name and her badge was promoted to detective in the rape counseling division of the police department. She beats me up, another woman, and now she gets to help rape victims. I can't imagine how much non-compassion was shown to rape victims with that police officer. The male officer left Cleveland. I don't blame him. I wouldn't have stayed here either. I think we're in trouble. I think that there are some really big red flags going up here. And if we don't really, really demilitarize the Cleveland Police Department, if we don't put protect and serve back as their motto, if we don't put protect and serve back as the first and foremost and get them the proper training, there are going to be more dead bodies out there. And we have to have a prosecutor who has the guts to put it to the law and say no more. And I'm ashamed of our judges, so I want to throw that out there too. We have a judge who just completely said he thought the punishment was too harsh. So he gives back the job, he gives back the promotion, back into the position that they were in, and all the back pay. Where exactly is the punishment? That sends a strong message to the public that we don't care that they're killing you. That's a problem for me. And I think we need to wake up. I think it's time that we need to wake up and we need to take back what belongs to us. The courts belong to us. City council belongs to us. The mayor belongs to us. The police department, as scary as it might be for them, belongs to the public. They are servants. Taxpayer dollars pay them. They should come to work every day asking, how can I help you? And for a police union president to say, I don't think we should have cameras, you're an employee. You don't get to choose. That mentality has got to change. It's got to change. They have to understand they don't own this. They're a bunch of cowboys, and it has to change. And I'm saying that from personal experience. And you know, this is probably the first time I've talked about this since it happened to me. I very seldom talk about what happened to me. I always go out there and I say what happened to somebody else. But the bottom line is, I know what it feels like, and I know I'm lucky to be alive today, because that woman took me away from my house, and God knows she could have killed me that day and had a great story to tell on how and why it happened. So it's by God's grace I'm sitting here able to tell it. But she could have done anything to me that day. And that was the fear of my family. My husband said to me at that time, he said, I didn't know what she was going to do with you, because they actually sat in the car with me for almost 30 minutes before she actually called a supervisor to the scene. And she, according to policy, was supposed to call the supervisor when she was here. Why did she take me away from my home?
Did she and her partner have any conversation during that half hour about, ooh, what are we going to do now?
No. He actually didn't say anything. I think, again, he was a rookie. And in his defense, I think he was probably what Cleveland needs more of. He knew something was wrong with that situation. And when he got into the car with me, he looked at me, he said, please don't say anything else to her. Nothing. He knew that this was out of control as a rookie. What she was trying to teach him, when you look back, hindsight is 2020, what are these veteran officers teaching these rookies? What are they saying to them when they behave like that? That this is the way you treat the residents, the taxpayers in the city of Cleveland? And this young man had enough integrity to say, I'm not going to do that. He literally, like I said, became my protector. And there was a point where I was so weak from her pulling on me and grabbing on me, I almost collapsed. He picked me up and held me. He said, are you okay? I was like, no, I need some medicine, because I'm like really melting here. And he even went out and got the medicine, but by the time he came back in, they would not allow him to give me my medicine. So you see a systemic failure, as Mike DeWine is talking about, that's in even the lower increments of dealing with the public. And that is something that really needs to be examined a lot closer as well. When someone's brought into custody, when someone's taken, how are they treating people? What are they saying to people? And when someone says to me, you people are going to learn to listen and do what we tell you to do, there's a real division there. Whether it's black and white or police and resident, it's a clear division. You people. Being an African-American female and having a white woman tell me, you people, it's pretty clear what she was talking about. And I was concerned about not just my safety, but the safety of my son, who was coming to the defense of his mother. He's seeing his mother get hurt. For what reason? He's being threatened. So now you have a whole lot of mush in the mix here. And you have to ask again, what kind of mentality do these officers have? And what are they imparting on the rookies that are coming in? What are they telling them? It's okay for you to do this. It's okay for you to be this way. And it's not. It's not okay. And I think it needs to be exposed by the good police officers that are still on the force, because they're going to be the key to fixing this mess. They have to stop protecting the bad ones. They are hurting everybody by protecting the bad officers.